We know this playbook. Those were the first words that I heard that gave me a sense of comfort this year. And it's been almost a full year since Hamas attacked, raped, pillaged, executed, decapitated, dismembered, and burned our people alive. It has been a year since 248 people living in Israel were stolen from us and taken into captivity. And it has also been a year that we have seen and heard unabashed Jew hatred and anti-Zionist rhetoric. It has been a brutal year for the Jewish people, and experts are saying that it still might get worse and then worse again before it gets better. It is a lot to hold in our hearts. It is exhausting, it is depleting, and it is existentially terrifying. But Noah Tishby, an Israel activist and social media influencer, was right when she said those words to us. We know this playbook. She was right. The ancient Egyptians used this playbook when they tried to destroy us. Then the Babylonians, then the Persians, then the Greeks, and the Romans did too. And then came the Nazis, who also used the playbook to try to eradicate us. Each time we experienced suffering and losses, but none of our enemies have ever destroyed us. And it is us, Am Yisrael, that has lived on, while all of those other groups, the ancient Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, and the Nazis, are no more. No Hamas, no Hezbollah, no Iran. This is not a new playbook. So today, since we know our enemy's playbook, I thought that I would devote my sermon to sharing what's in our playbook, what has enabled the Jewish people to persevere, a playbook that has served us well for 5,785 years. It was my son Gideon and Steph Curry who reminded me of playbook play number 1, have faith. It was after midnight on a Saturday night when Gideon called, which is usually not a good sign, but I immediately heard the joy in his voice. He had just been playing in a big basketball tournament at a camp he was working at in the Poconos, and he wanted to tell us the details of the game, at least initially. What he was really calling for, though, I think, was to tell us that during the game he broke his nose. I called the next morning for an appointment to have it reset, and the only problem was that the only day the doctor was available in that 10-day window to reset one's nose was on Tisha B'Av. I contemplated. On one hand, that was not ideal, but on the other hand, there was something sort of fitting about putting another mildly painful thing on a day that is solely dedicated to commemorating all of the horrible things that have been done to the Jewish people throughout our history. From the destruction of the temples in Jerusalem to the expulsions to the inquisitions and the pogroms. Yup, I decided it felt fitting, and I booked the appointment. I called Gideon. He was fine with it, but he had one question. Would they need to put him under? I don't think so, I said. How come? And he replied, I just want to be sure that I'm not asleep if the Mashiach comes. So let's unpack these words. The Mashiach is the Jewish belief that at some point we will merit the arrival of someone or maybe something that will transform or perfect our world. According to our tradition, it could be that it will happen when we are so good that we merit it, or it could also be when things are so bad that you can't imagine them getting any worse. The sages say that the Mashiach will likely appear on Tisha B'Av because it is a day filled with a history of tragedies and catastrophes. There have been many times over the past year that I have found myself stuck in figuring out how we will ever be done with this mess. But Gideon's words reminded me that we can't stop hoping, and we must never lose our faith. Because even when we can't figure out our way forward, even when our hope is waning, and even when we can't imagine how things will get better, we have to recognize that our imaginations are limited. We couldn't have imagined so many things that have happened this year happening. And so we need to keep believing that someone or maybe something that we cannot predict or even conceive of will happen that will change our reality and transform our world for the better. Things will get better. Somehow they will. We just need to have hope, and we need to hold on to faith. Steph Curry, he inspires me in his faith in himself and in his team. This summer during the Olympics, when Team USA was playing basketball against Serbia, the game was not going well. At halftime, USA was down by 17. In the fourth quarter, they were down by 13. And then something remarkable happened. Steph Curry started making three-point shots. He dropped 36 points to lead Team USA to victory. Now, when Curry was asked in an interview what that experience was like, he responded with these words: "I knew we would win. I didn't know how it would happen, but I knew that in the end, we would be the victors." The Jewish people need that kind of confidence right now. We will survive this. What will be between now and then, we do not know. But the Jewish people will survive this, and then we will do what we always do. We will rebuild ourselves, we will rebuild our relationships, we will rebuild our lives, and we will rebuild our world. We always do. Playbook 1. Hold on to faith. Playbook 2. Don't let the horrible moments define us. I went to visit my daughter's Jewish history professor on back to school night. She's in high school. She had been a Jewish studies professor at a university, but her teacher left her campus in order to distance herself from the toxic culture and woke ideology in what she referred to as the lachrymose concept of Jewish history, meaning the tendency to teach Judaism by overly focusing on the negative. As we sat in Maya's classroom, her teacher explained that in Jewish studies departments throughout the world, Jewish history focuses almost entirely on dead Jews. She didn't only want to teach about dead Jews or the expulsions, inquisitions, pogroms, or Holocaust. She wanted to focus on all of the millennia of Jewish history that happened in between those horrors. All of the years that the Jewish people thrived and did what others could not have even imagined to be possible. My youngest daughter, Maya, agreed with this approach. A few weeks ago, I invited her to join me at a talk about anti-Semitism. She took a pass, explaining that she's tired of conversations about anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. Perhaps her teacher was onto something. You see, we can't ignore the bad stuff, but we also must not stop talking about all of the extraordinary things, the accomplishments, the creations, the resilience, and the perseverance that our people have contributed to the world for the past 5,785 years. Remember Playbook 2. Don't let the horrible moments define us. Playbook 3. Be a proud and courageous Jew. Be proud of who you are and have the courage to carry it into the world. It was on October 14th when I logged on to Zoom. I was scheduled to teach a group of 20 and 30-somethings that night, 18 of them. They were all exploring Judaism for the sake of conversion. I logged on, and I wasn't sure if any of them would show up. I didn't know if they still wanted to be on this journey. After all, it is not easy being a Jew these days. But to my surprise, at exactly 7:30, the Zoom room opened and person after person arrived until every single one of them were there. All I could say was, "Really?" in total bewilderment. Despite the hate coming our way, they were all still eager to join the Jewish people. Yes, they responded emphatically. What those students on Zoom saw and experienced was real. The way that we Jews stick together, the way that we show up for each other, the way that we support each other, the connection that we all share. When my beloved friend was asked by a non-Jewish colleague after the October 7th massacre if she had family in Israel, do you know what she responded? Yes, 8 million. And she was right. We are family. We are a tribe. We are a religion, and we are a people. We have a shared past, a shared fate, a shared destiny, a shared morality, and a shared vision for the future that we will work for. And we should be really proud. This year, being a proud Jew took courage. People were canceled and isolated in their workplaces, on social media, and on their campuses for being outwardly Jewish or supportive of Israel's right to exist. Some people were physically assaulted for not hiding their Jewishness, and most still remained proud and courageous Jews anyway. While 8% of Jews joined the encampments, many of our Jewish teenagers and 20-somethings did the opposite. There were more Jewish stars and more kippot that went on to necks and heads than they were that came off. Jews and our youth were wearing these symbols of their Judaism with pride. They stood up for the Jewish people and they stood up for Israel. They sat in on never-ending meetings about BDS, and they spoke up knowing that there would be consequences, and they did it anyway. They hung posters of hostages in the public square, and they returned to replace them when they got torn down. So many of our college students are warriors. They gave us so much to be proud of, and they gave me so much hope. This summer, Rafi and I hosted a dinner for our college students at our home. They told us stories and they showed us videos of campus life that were truly beyond our imagination. And yet, to their credit, they stayed, they endured the discomfort, and they were courageous, and I am so proud. Playbook 3, be a proud and courageous Jew. Playbook 4, learn your history and learn our story. A few weeks after October 7th, we put up pictures of the then 248 hostages. We put them in the other sanctuary in the Berman Reuben in the alcove, and I prayed with them in my sight and in my heart. And soon, one of the best mothers I know called me. There was a problem. Her 10-year-old daughter had wandered through the sanctuary after religious school, and she saw the pictures of children, some who were her age, who had been kidnapped or murdered, and she couldn't sleep at night. We moved the pictures. In hindsight, I'm still not sure if that was the right decision on our end. But her concern was real. She was legitimately worried about the emotional well-being of her daughter. The next week, I sat down with a dozen devoted parents with children in our religious school to talk about how we talk about things like war and hostages with our children. The parents were struggling. They cared deeply about the situation, but they also understandably wanted to protect their children from knowing about the horrors that could likely haunt them. And so the next week, at the beginning of November, I went into the sanctuary to pray with our entire religious school, 180 children strong. I wanted to honor their parents' wishes, but I also wanted to teach them the Achenu prayer that we recite for those in captivity. And so I chose my words very carefully. I explained to the children that the prayer asked God to enable all people to be safe in the homes of their families, with the people they loved and that loved them. It was then that 10-year-old Bella raised her hand. Rabbi Saroken, she said, is it true that what's happening is all of our fault? No, Bella, I said, it's not true. What is true is that some very bad people went into Israel and did some terrible things to a lot of people. And Israel had to respond in order to protect itself and the people there, so that horrible things never happen again. And then I asked Bella who told her that. And she said, my best friend. Well, she used to be my best friend. So then I asked the next question that came to my mind. Has anyone else had a friend or someone tell them that what's happening right now is all Israel's fault? About 90% of the kids raised their hands. So while Jewish parents were trying to spare their children from the horrors, it turns out they had been hearing about the horrors from classmates and social media. What I learned that day from our children is that we have to be the ones who inform our children, that it's our story to tell and it is our history. And as hard as it is, we all need to become experts in Israel's history and in Jewish history in order to help our children and our grandchildren understand and navigate what's happening in Israel and throughout our world right now. Playbook number 4. We have got to be the tellers of our story. Playbook 5. Visit Israel as soon as you can and bring your family. Birthright Israel was based on the notion that we should invest in getting every 18 through 26-year-old to Israel. Their goal was to make an impact on Jewish identity before people chose who to date, who to marry, and who to create a family with. They wanted to inspire our young adults to create Jewish families and live Jewish lives. Recent studies have found that if you wait until our children or your grandchildren are 18, with the propaganda that is now circulating in all of our schools, and with the trolls, misinformation, and disinformation on social media, 18 will be way too late. If you want your children or grandchildren to love Israel, we are now learning that we need to find a way to get them there before or during middle school. Latest. The earlier, the better. And while you're there, we need to expose them to all that is beautiful and also to the complexities of Israel. We need to let them make friends in Israel and volunteer in Israel, and to let them experience Israel as the home for the Jewish people from the days of Abraham and Sarah until today. Yes, we were expelled repeatedly, but we always found our way back home. Playbook 5. A personal relationship with Israel is crucial. If you are able to go and can afford to go, you should go. Playbook 6. Make time for joy. Our prayer book promises us that weeping may come upon us at night, but joy comes in the morning. I don't know when that joy will come, but I do know that it has been a brutal year, and most of us could use a respite. When the war began, there were certain things that I wouldn't do. It was an arbitrary list. I wouldn't get my nails done because it felt too indulgent when people were suffering. I wouldn't go to parties or celebrations if I could help it because this also didn't feel right when our people were suffering. I wouldn't post pictures of vacations on social media because when there were people who were displaced, struggling, or had children serving, to think that world Jewry didn't care. I didn't want that. My list went on and on. But a year later, I now think that it's important for Jews who are losing sleep over the condition of the Jewish world and wrestling with a national burnout and with a tough election and all the things that we're carrying with us personally. We should make sure to find things that bring joy into our lives, whether that's doing gratitude journaling, taking a dance class, playing pickleball, camping, or Zentangling. Just make sure that you do something that brings some happiness into your life. Even Noah Argamani, she had a dance party or a back-to-life party after she was released from captivity. She knew that it wasn't ideal, with her boyfriend and others still being held in captivity, her mother having died from cancer weeks after Noah's return, and friends still serving in the IDF. It felt like it wasn't a great time for a party, but she also realized more than ever how important it is to celebrate life. Lesson 7, lean into Jewish traditions. Never before have Jewish traditions been as helpful to me as they have been this year. The prayers have helped me realize that we are among countless generations of Jews to have enemies. The rabbis mention them throughout our prayers. They give us language that feels foreign but helpful to deal with those who seek to destroy us. Shabbat can give us a break from the news cycle. It can give us a chance to strengthen our relationships with Jews because it feels good to be in community these days. And it can give us an opportunity to foster relationships with those who aren't Jewish too, as we certainly could use some allies and friends these days. Mitzvot give us purpose, and our Torah helps us feel like we're a part of a bigger story. So when you're feeling unanchored or down, try turning to prayer or gratitude or Shabbat or mitzvot or Torah. And suddenly you will remember that we are a link in an unbroken chain of faith. So lean into our traditions. And my final Playbook rule, Playbook 8, is play the role in this historic moment that you will be proud of later. We all need to be doing something for the Jewish people right now. Something that we will one day feel proud of. I started out by saying to have faith and trust and to believe, but I will also share that nothing nowadays feels like a given. We have staved off BDS on most campuses. We still have enough senators and congressmen and women and politicians who are supporting Israel. We can feel safe for now. And we also have a lot of mostly quiet or silent supporters in America. But we can't assume that these alliances are sustainable without our advocacy. I know that we will endure these times, but there will inevitably come a day when we are telling the story of this moment in history to our children or our grandchildren or even our great-grandchildren. When little Micah or Rachel or Maddie or Ellie will look up at us with eyes filled with curiosity and hope. And they will say, Grandma, Zadie, what were you doing when the Jews and Israel were under attack? What role did you play in ensuring our survival? And I hope that you will be able to respond to them with pride. I followed the playbook of our people, the one that has gotten us through every century's darkest days. I knew that we would be okay, although I wasn't sure how. I stayed audaciously hopeful. I was a proud and courageous Jew. I didn't let the horrible times define us. I made space for joy. I learned our history, I shared it, and I taught it to the next generation. I visited Israel, and I took your parents with me. And I made sure to do my part for the Jewish people. I followed our playbook to Jewish survival that has served us for 5,785 years. And if you ever need that playbook, just know that it will guide you through the dark days too. And never forget, Am Yisrael Chai, that the Jewish people will be here and will thrive forever, and you will too. Shana Tova.